Welcome to the video tutorial on creating fund transactions. First, click on Add Transaction. Here you can enter a date just like in the Income tab. However, this date must be within the currently selected financial planning period. Let's enter an example amount, let's say $100. As for the transaction type, the program automatically suggests a direct investment into the fund. This is used when you need to add money to a fund, but it is not part of the income that the fund would normally receive. An example of such a situation would be when a founder is making an investment into the company. Next, let's select a fund and write Founder's Investment in the description, then save. Now, let's make a transaction for the transfer of money from one fund to another. Click on Add Transaction once again. The date can stay unchanged. However, we do need to change the transaction type. Here we have two options, just a transfer and a transfer with debt tracking. They are similar, but in the case of the latter, the program will track how much money one fund is in debt to another. Let's select the transfer with debt tracking. You should use debt tracking in cases where you need to use a sum of money somewhere else but plan to return it a short time afterwards. As you can see, in the list of source funds, you will be able to see the available sum. This sum only includes money that is not currently being used to pay for purchase orders or bills. In funds where there is enough available money for the desired transaction, it will be colored green, but in funds where there isn't enough, it will be colored red. Let's select F1 as the source fund and F2 as the destination fund. And for the description, we will just enter temporary. Now click on Save. Only direct investment and transfer transactions, both with debt and without, have to be entered manually. Payments for purchase orders and bills are entered in other tabs of financial planning and will show up in this tab automatically, which we will see in subsequent tutorials. Any fund transactions change the remaining sum of money in the relevant funds. You can view the remaining sums in the list of funds in the corresponding column. You can view how much money was in the fund at the beginning of the period, how much was added, how much was spent, the amount currently available, as well as debt. When it comes to debt, we suggest using this feature only to track a small number, up to 3 debts between funds, and even then, only when you plan to return the debt very soon. Using this feature should be an exception, not a habit. Technically, of course, there are no hard limits in the program as to how many debts you could have at one time. You could have hundreds and even thousands of debts at once, and the program will still keep calculating them. But you should still try to keep the debts to a minimum. Just imagine viewing your list of funds, which could grow to include several dozen items, and seeing debt numbers on most of the funds. One fund borrows from another, then loans that money to yet another fund, and so on and so on. Firstly, after a few such cycles, it will be far from easy to tell which fund actually owes money to which, and how much money. It can be tracked using the filter, but this can end up being a rather time-consuming process. And secondly, to sort out a mess like that, we will need to start from the last transaction. Fine, we returned 1,000 from Fund A to Fund B, but B is already 2,000 in debt to Fund C. You also have to keep in mind that some money in the funds might not even be available, as it could be reserved to pay for purchase orders and bills. So in that situation, we would not be able to return the debt in that week, which would cut into the profits for next week. Therefore, when taking loans from one fund to another becomes a rule, not an exception, correctly refunding them can become a very drawn-out process with many steps required. So, to reiterate, please use common sense and keep these tools simple to use. Loan money between funds only when you absolutely must. However, if you just wish to consolidate two funds, just select the transaction type where debt is not tracked. Now, let's click on this icon at the top. In this pie chart, we can see how much money is remaining in the funds, as well as how much money is moving between them. Using the tabs at the top, you can switch to various different modes. You can also display different financial planning periods with this tool, browsing them here. That concludes today's tutorial. Thank you for watching, and as always, we will be happy to answer your questions in the comments below.